Hello again, I'm Dan Morfitt and this is your daily rundown on Channel 7. I'm joined now by an old friend of the channel, urban forager Dave Winnard from Discover the Wild. Welcome back to That's Manchester.
Pleasure, as always.
Discover the Wild. Although you do discover the world, you forage.
You do. You discover the world through foraging and kind of interacting with nature and getting hands-on, and it's all good stuff at the end of the day.
You started Discover the Wild. I'm saying it now. Discover the Wild 7 years ago. How did it begin for you? What made you kick it off?
It was all about educating people about the kind of nature that's on their doorstep, and it kind of started off teaching people about bird watching or kind of identifying butterflies, and then teach people about plants and mushrooms and things like that. And then it became apparent that a lot of people get interested in natural history through kind of making stuff, going out into the hedgerows, picking blackberries, things like that, making jams and identifying plants that way and learning more about them. So we started kind of teaching people about edible ones, poisonous plants, medicinal ones. And if you're going to go out picking stuff from the wild, 'cause it's getting more and more fashionable to do that, is if you're going to do it safely. Be taught which ones you can pick, which ones you shouldn't pick, the laws, things like that. And it's just kind of expanded from that.
And is it all about finding out what's in season, what's coming around in certain times?
Yeah.
What are the telltale signs in nature?
Yeah.
Of how it all works together?
Yeah. You know exactly where you are in the calendar by what plants you're looking at, what you're picking, what's ripe, what's ready. It's kind of, you're really connecting with nature, knowing when things are going to be ripe when they're ripe. It's nature will let you know when it all is. You need a bit more sun or a bit more rain, things like that, and you pick things which are totally seasonal. You can't just kind of go out and pick wild garlic now. Everyone was picking wild garlic back in the spring. If you want wild garlic, you've got to pick it then. And then things are coming into season now which you can't get in winter and spring or even the beginning of summer.
And what's coming into season now regarding plants and mushrooms?
Mushrooms is the big thing. It's right at the start of the kind of the autumn season, and that just means mushrooms for me. And going out into the woodlands and picking them, because that's how I got started in kind of
picking mushrooms, foraging.
For my grandma, she used to take me out into the woods and she used to pay me a penny for every common species I found, 2 pennies if it was uncommon, and 5 pennies if it was rare. And at the end of the walk, we'd walk past a sweet shop, and with whatever I'd earned, I'd get in sweets. It's this kind of treasure hunt. And although there are mushrooms out in spring and summer and winter and things, it's autumn where you just go into the woods and there's loads to kind of find. And there's lots of raspberries, blackberries there right now, and there's plenty out there. In a couple of weeks there'll be loads of apples, pears, and there's loads of things to go out for people to make. It's just that it's that time of year, it's the harvest time where nature's providing lots and lots, and it's time to kind of make hay while the sun shines.
So nature's larder gives us an abundance of stuff. With mushrooms in particular, when I was growing up, I was always used to see different mushrooms.
Yeah.
But I was always told, just don't touch them whatsoever. You don't know what it is. It could kill you.
Yeah.
So you see some spores at the root of a tree. Would they be good to eat?
It totally depends on which species it is. Over the years, I've heard so many kind of old wives' tales on how you tell edible from poisonous species, and they're just so far-fetched and ridiculous. Everything from, if you cook a poisonous mushroom with a silver spoon, it will turn it black. Those kind of to mushrooms growing in rings are poisonous, which is nonsense when you understand the biology of them. There are 16,000 species of fungi recorded in the UK alone. 4,000 of those are larger mushrooms that you're going to encounter in the woodlands. Unless you know all those 4,000 species, you have no idea whether they're edible or poisonous or things like that. And you do have to just have your sensible head on and say, I don't know what it is, I'm going to leave it alone. But there are some real iconic species. It surprises everyone that I go out in the autumn and pick loads of fresh porcini that people think, oh, you can only get that in Italy, dried at the supermarket.
Yeah, that's really expensive.
Yes, whereas in Manchester, it's probably one of the commonest 20 species of mushroom to go out and find, and you can buy them fresh that you'll never be able to get in the supermarket, and they're everywhere.
So you're saying posh mushrooms that you find at some of the best restaurants, there's loads of them in Manchester?
Chanterelle, morels, things like chicken of the woods, beefsteak. Beefsteak literally looks like a slab of meat growing out of the side of a tree. Its Latin name is Fistulina hepatica, hepatica meaning liver-like, and it looks like a big chunk of liver. It even bleeds. It kind of oozes this red liquid, has a texture of raw meat, and you cook it like meat. And these things...
Those are the ones that my mum said don't touch because they're coming out of a tree, but they're fine to eat.
If it is beefsteak, there's lots of things that can grow on trees, and there's it would be irresponsible just to say that, you know, these things are edible, these things are poisonous, unless you've seen it and used a reputable field guide to kind of identify it, or had an expert say that's what it is. There are lots of things to kind of avoid. The one that I get the most emails about, and the most people approach me who said, I ate this, do you know what it is? Which is the most kind of horrifying, you know, start to a sentence. It's like, please, you know. And there's a mushroom called the yellow stainer, which is increasing in Greater Manchester. Looks exactly like the field mushroom, the kind of white button mushroom you get in the supermarket. But when you touch it, it does start to turn chrome yellow, and it smells slightly inky. But people still pick them, cook them, eat them, and the kind of problems from, you know, ranging from a couple of days sitting on the toilet right the way through to ending in a coma, and everything in between.
That's quite a wide gap.
It is quite a wide
medical.
But it's quite a common mushroom. I've seen lots of it in the last couple of weeks all around Greater Manchester. But that's the one that's notoriously causes the most poison, you know, accidental poisonings. There's far more poisonous plants than mushrooms in Greater Manchester. There's lots of things like hemlock water dropwort, but fungi just captures this imagination. People have this fear, this innate fear that people have about mushrooms. With plants, people just don't seem to have it as much. Yet statistically, I think you're more likely to get poisoned from plants in Greater Manchester than mushrooms, or even things like giant hogweed, which always rears its ugly head at this time of year.
That burns the skin, doesn't it?
Burns the skin, yeah. And there's always, you know, horrifying cases always in the papers and things at this time of year, because it's out in flower. It's a huge thing, and in Greater Manchester, really kind of problematic, because it's just spreading along the rivers and waterways, and it's everywhere. And you know, people need to be aware of those kind of plants. They're not out to get you. They're not going, you know, creep up on you or anything like that. But in certain areas, especially along rivers, you need to be aware of them and not to handle them. Because like you say, if you get some of the sap or anything on your hand, on your skin in direct sunlight, it will burn, and horrible burns as well.
I remember lads at school getting giant hogweed and just their legs were done in.
Yeah.
With Discover the Wild, you forage yourself, but you do take people out, don't you, to show them the land and the do's and the don'ts. Yeah,
the laws, the kind of, you know, if you're going to forage, this is how to do it safely, ethically, sustainably as well, showing people that, you know, if you just pick everything, next year you won't get anything or whatever, so you're only kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
You do think it's nature's larder, it's free?
Yes, to an extent.
Take it all.
To an extent, and it's kind of, nature has kind of evolved to withstand being harvested and or grazed or whatever. But it's just about being slightly more ethical in this time where there are businesses out there that are looking to make a killing on all this wild, nutritious food for, you know, that is kind of free.
Well, now you said there's porcini mushrooms in Greater Manchester.
You've got to get up early to beat me. That's the problem. And they are very common, but from my experience, you know, there aren't that many people who will still go out and look for these things. Lots of people are interested in where their food comes from and you know, what's in season and things like that, but people don't have the time as much to kind of go out and pick all these things, or to the thing that's really, you know, grating me at the minute is apps that people are downloading, and if you, with plants especially, if you hold your phone up to the plant, it will tell you what it is. So you don't need to bother to learn, and you know, like I did when I was a kid, which was literally spend hours every week going through field books and learning or how to identify all these plants and things. These apps will do it. Well, the first cases of people being poisoned by these apps getting it wrong, because you know, you hold the plant up to the phone, it kind of analyzes it, looks at something on its database and suggests it's X, Y, or Z.
So they might have the knowledge there, but they don't have the experience.
Whether they not even have the knowledge, they're just totally depending on apps and phones to think, you know, this is you know, this will safely identify everything I show it, and they don't work, really don't work. So you know, taking, you know, going with an expert, going out into the countryside or even in urban environments, and someone taking you by the hand and showing you plants and saying this is safe, and it's safe because of X, Y, and Z. You can't misidentify it, or you know, or showing you other plants to avoid because you could easily, you know, poison yourself.
And because of that, you know, experts like yourself are going to be in greater demand with foraging, because we've had the sustainable fish debates, and people are buying better fish and more varieties of fish. We've had the debate about animal welfare, and people are buying good British beef and good British lamb from sustainable. Do you think foraging's that next food experience that people want? Because I know there's restaurants that are now only dealing in seasonal foraged.
Yeah. One of the best
Cereal.
restaurants in the world is Noma, over in Copenhagen, and it's all their menus foraged. Everything's foraged, and it's one of the won so many Michelin stars and things like that. But I think there are big issues. Every year we're talking more and more about food banks and sustainability and things like that. But last year I think I picked about 50 black bin bag fulls of apples from urban areas in Manchester where the apples will just rot on the ground. It's not even going back into nature, and the birds aren't going to feed them because they're just not in that suitable habitat. That you could make apple juice with. You could make cider if you wanted to be slightly more adventurous, but you could just make pies or jams or chutneys and all these kind of all this food that's just literally going to waste. And we're doing nothing with it. This is, it's slightly criminal in that when people are approaching food banks, we should be educating people about what's on their doorstep that they could take, and also planting, lots of fruit trees and plants that are going to, feed us. New housing estates should have apple trees on every corner, as standard. So then the community can come together and pick stuff and make stuff and, use naturally occurring food.
So it's really time for schools and parents to get involved and get the knowledge of what's really out there, and maybe avoid the supermarket because there's plenty out there.
Yeah, go for a nice walk and see what you can find.
Forager Dave from Discover the Wild, thank you so much for coming in and
pleasure
enlightening us, and hopefully come in another season.
Absolutely.
After mushrooms, we'll be expecting something else come autumn time.
Absolutely. It's always evolving and changing. That's the best thing about it.
Dave, thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Next, Zia and Wendy get some off their chests or praise something highly with their something to say. See you in about 3 minutes' time. This is the Daily Rundown.